Hi guys, welcome back to Leading Teen Writers. Now, if you have been a student of mine, you would know that for me, editing is the most important part of writing. So I'm going to take you on a really fun series of different ways to proofread your work, revise, edit, because this is where the magic happens. This is where you become a good writer. So let's get started. Editing. Where do we begin? How are we going to turn you from a writer into an editor? A writer is someone who writes maybe the first thing that comes to their mind, but an editor is someone who goes back, looks at their work, and sees how they can improve. You can see why being an editor makes you a better writer. Throughout this series, we're going to have 8 different lessons. And these 8 different lessons are going to provide you with ways in which to proofread your work, to go back and read it again. The first one is all about being concise. What does it mean to be concise? We're going to go over that today. So what this means is you want to read, theoretically, you should read your work at least 8 times, and you should read it with one of these steps in mind at a time. That way, you will have the most perfect work by the end, one that has gone through multiple rounds of revision and proofreading, and one that is, to the best of your ability, the most perfect work that you could have made it. Numbers 2 through 8, we will go through in subsequent lessons. For example, mastering clauses and complex sentences, adding a variety to the beginning of sentences, not always beginning the sentence in the same boring way, using more effective transitions. I'm sure your teachers have tried to talk to you about this before, fixing run-on sentences and dangling modifiers. This is deep grammar here. Checking on the consistency. Do you always abbreviate with periods or do you leave out periods? Do you say US or do you say USA? You have to stay consistent. Do you stay consistent with the tenses that you're using? Number 7, is your evidence as strong as it could be? And is your lead into your evidence and lead out very strong? And then freshening up your vocabulary. That is the bow on the present of your writing. So you may be asking, do I really have to reread and edit my work? Well, what that question really is asking, do I really care about my reader's experience? Do I really care that my reader is spending their precious time on my article? Do I really care that if I make a bad impression, my reader will lose my trust and most likely won't read my work in the future? So you have to ask yourself, okay, if you don't reread and edit your work, you're pretty much alienating your reader. And what that means is you're pushing them away. You're showing that you don't care about their time that they're spending on your article. You don't care about the experience. You don't care that if it's entertaining. You don't care if you've polished it so that they have a particular emotion or feeling from it. So you want to ask yourself these questions instead of, oh, do I really have to edit it? Ask yourself, do I really care about the person who is my reader? Why does editing elevate the reader's experience? Well, it adds entertainment value. If you go back and edit something, you can say, wow, when I was writing it, it seemed funny, but now it just kind of seems boring. I need to figure out how I'm going to add imagery or add interesting vocabulary to make this more entertaining. Maybe I'm going to add dialogue. Maybe I'm going to add more action. It also elevates the experience by showing your integrity as an artist, showing your craftsmanship, showing that you put in the work, that they're not just reading something that has no value to it, and that you put in artistry. You figured out what language works the best to have the right emotional effect on the reader. It builds your credibility. Like I said, you're going to lose someone's trust if one article they read from you is subpar. It's mediocre. If you go to a fast food restaurant or a restaurant and you order a burrito and it tastes subpar and not that good, are you going to go back? No. Are you going to tell your friends about it? Maybe you'll tell them how bad it was. So you lose your reputation when you are not editing and thinking about the reader's experience. Another way is when you're going back to read, You're reading it through the reader's eyes, not yours. When you're writing it, it's your eyes. When you're rereading it, it's the audience's eyes. And so you're like going back to see, did I relate to the audience? Can I relate to the audience more effectively? Can I make them see themselves in the article, which is going to make them more interested? How do I go back and change the parts that are not relating to the audience? So today's lesson in grammar and editing is all about being concise. What does it mean to be concise? Has your teacher ever told you to be more concise? Has your teacher ever edited your work and said, can you delete this word to be more concise? Let's dive in. What does concise even mean? If we look in the dictionary, definition of concise means giving a lot of information clearly and in a few words. So that means you are taking out words, even though you're not taking out the information. So oftentimes when we speak, we give a lot of extra details that aren't really needed. And if we are writing like we are speaking, then we are going to be writing too much and it's going to be a waste of time for the reader. You need to be able to go back and see, how can I have said that in fewer words? Concise means free from all elaboration and superfluous detail. So if you're just going on and on and on with extra adjectives and extra information that doesn't really need to be there, right? It's too elaborate, it's too unnecessary, then you're going to lose your reader. They're going to get bored and they're going to go walk away. Concise, again, it means brief, few words, but packed with information. So you're not taking out ideas. You're just finding a way to say those ideas in fewer words. That is how our culture appreciates writing. Here's an interesting quote I found. Many students think that adding unnecessary sentences with long words will make their writing more impressive. But in fact, almost every reader values concision, since concise writing is usually easier to read, better thought out, and better organized. That is simply better writing. So maybe if you're writing a novel, you don't have to worry about concision as much as if you're writing an article for a newspaper. You have to think about your audience. With a novel, somebody wants really embellished language that's going to ignite their imagination. With articles, people want information. They want it clearly, they want it simply. And yes, they want imagination, but they don't want you to get carried away by your imagination, like with fiction. So why be concise? Well, strong writing is concise writing. Long-winded sentences and expressions can confuse your reader, making them have to read it twice or maybe even 3 times to understand your point. And you don't want that. You don't want your reader to be confused because then they're going to stop reading. Concise writing means that you're being clear and you're a good writer. Long-winded writing that's very confusing and you have so many clauses in your sentences, you're so many adjectives, nobody can keep up. That's bad writing. So the key to writing concisely is not necessarily changing the way you write, but improving the way you edit. And that's the whole point of this series, is to try to get you guys to see you do not have to be perfect in your writing. You just have to be perfect in your editing. You do not have to do a great job on the first time you write. Every first draft is not that great. So you want to instead improve the way you edit, the way your mind works. There's no way you're going to be perfect on the first time you write. That's why there's editing. And that's why the best writers are the best editors. Again, I'm going to reiterate that. The key to writing concisely is not changing the way you write, but improving the way you edit. So for all of you who say, oh, I just can't write like that. Well, that's because you're only writing and you're not going back to edit. So editing is where the magic happens because you can see the work through the reader's eyes. A couple notes on being concise. To be concise does not mean you need to cut everything down in a sentence, right? If you cut down too much, you may lose the core meaning of your idea. I only want you to look and see if you can take out things that don't really contribute to the core meaning of the idea. We do this a lot. We add a lot of filler words that don't need to be there, and we're going to do some activities to show you how this looks. A couple more notes. Sometimes you don't have to cut out an idea, you just have to reword it to make it slightly more brief and clear. Have you ever read something and you're like, I just don't understand that. I wish this person would have seen this through my eyes and they would have made this more clear and easy to understand. Again, this may not always be the case for more creative storytelling and fiction writing. We're focusing a little bit more on nonfiction writing, the kind you would do for an article, kind you would do for our Leading Teen Writers publication. So why is concision associated with sophistication? Why do sophisticated writers feature concise writing? Well, sometimes the more smart you try to sound, the less sophisticated you actually appear to your reader. In other words, they can see right through your attempts to sound sophisticated. Sophistication really comes from brevity, clarity, and using strong vocabulary when necessary, but not overdoing it. Okay, let's dive into our example. This writer wants to create a topic sentence for their research paper conclusion. This is their first draft. To summarize everything on the whole, we must take into account the very horrendous and unforgivable aspects of the lives of the Native Americans all over the US and make a change, since nothing has yet to be done about their deplorable and absurd conditions, especially if you consider how it was their land before it was our land. In your eyes, how did they do? I just want to remind you, what does it mean to be concise? Concise means giving a lot of information clearly and in a few words. Did they do that? Free from all elaboration and superfluous or unnecessary detail. Did they do that? Brief but packed with information. Did they do that? I'll let you guys decide, but I'm also going to share with you my thoughts. To me, there are some things that didn't work. And if this person had reread it out loud to themselves, they might have seen, oh, this is a little bit long-winded and it's a little bit over the top and is really long. And my reader might be confused as to what my main point is. So a couple things that didn't really work for me. There's too many repetitive, in-your-face adjectives. Horrendous, unforgivable, deplorable, absurd. Obviously, they're trying to hit home the idea that things were bad. But it's really too many. It's too many. It's actually quite repetitive. Absurd and deplorable, what's the difference between those two words? Horrendous, unforgivable, those all four adjectives mean the exact same thing. So couldn't they have just used one of them? That would be more concise. There's also unnecessary phrases that distract from the core meaning of the sentence. So for example, to summarize everything on the whole, we must take into account. Is that really necessary? I mean, in a conclusion, people are expecting you to summarize. Do you really have to say to summarize everything on the whole? And also, if you're going to say to summarize, do you really have to say everything on the whole? Doesn't summarize mean you're taking everything into account? Okay, so you can see how we write like this. We do. We talk like this and we write like this. But the good writer should be able to go back and edit these down. Also, third point, it kind of keeps going on and on. It could have ended a little bit earlier. Maybe it could have been a little bit more to the point. To me, it seems like there's too much sentiment. There's too much emotion. Instead of a detached, unbiased point of view, it seems like this person is trying to get at our emotions rather than our intellect and our rationality. And I think that is not necessarily the best way to convey yourself in nonfiction and analytical writing. Let's take a look at a possible revised version. It's possible. You could do anything you want, but here's an example of something that could be a little bit shorter to the point, and it's very clear what their point is. And I've even tried to fix the vocabulary, to use strong vocabulary, but not to overdo it. Let's take a look. So instead of saying, to summarize everything on the whole, we must take into account the very horrendous and unforgivable aspects of the lives of the Native Americans all over the US and make a change since nothing has yet to be done about their deplorable and absurd conditions, especially if you consider how it was their land before it was our land. We'll watch how we can basically get the same idea, but we condensed it down. Native Americans' shocking living conditions stemming from their stolen land have yet to be ameliorated by the US government. Which one do you like better? Stop and think about the differences between these two. By the way, ameliorated means to make something better, to remedy something. There was a little bit of an odd vagueness in the first one. Even though they have more words and more sentences, to me, it was more vague. Who hasn't done anything? Who are the people who haven't done anything? Here it says very, very explicitly, it's the US government. Their unforgivable aspects of their lives. What does that mean? Not sure. But here we talk about their shocking living conditions. So it's much more specific. Their living conditions are what is the problem. The idea of, if you consider how it was their land before it was our land, gets condensed down to their stolen land. And overall, I think it's just more fun to read something where clearly the author has stopped, went back to read it and said, hey, I don't want to waste my reader's time. I want to give them exactly what I'm trying to say. I still want to use good language, good vocabulary, good grammar, but I really do not want to waste their time with really crazy, long, repetitive sentences and unnecessary words. So it brings us to 3 points here. How can I be more concise? How today can I walk away from this lesson and change how I edit? Number 1, go back and reread each sentence and eliminate any empty phrases. Avoid cliches and eliminate redundancies or anything that you might have repeated. Okay, just to do a little bit more exercises here that will make it very clear. We have 2 sentences. The first one starts like this. As far as I'm concerned, discrimination against certain ethnic groups continues to exist for all intents and purposes. What the heck is going on there? Well, let's take a look at the second sentence. Discrimination against certain ethnic groups continues to exist. Wow. So we have the same ideas, but one is more concise than the other. Same ideas. Discrimination against certain ethnic groups continues to exist. But as you see in the first one, they added 2 empty phrases, as far as I'm concerned, and all intents and purposes. Why do those even need to be in there? What does it mean, all intents and purposes? I mean, why did you add that? That doesn't give me any information. And as far as I'm concerned, why did you need to say that? When you write, obviously, the things you're writing about, you're concerned about. So is it even necessary to say something like that? So just deleting those 2 unnecessary empty phrases, you get a perfect, beautiful, sophisticated, and concise sentence. Okay, here are some examples of filler words, empty phrases that we use all the time in our writing. In my opinion, it's my opinion that, as far as I'm concerned, what's more is that, the fact is that, in the manner of speaking, and the thing is that, all of these are empty phrases that we do not need. They're just filler words. If we took them out, our writing would be much more sophisticated. Let's take a look at these 2 sentences. These each have empty phrases in italics that can be deleted. At this point in time, the latest iPad is expensive due to the fact that it has no competition. What you could have said, instead of at this point in time, you could be more concise and just say now. And instead of saying due to the fact that, which is 5 words, you can condense that down to because. Now the new iPad is expensive because it has no competition. The first one may sound fancier, but I am telling you, in our world, in our culture, the fancier you sound does not make you a more sophisticated writer. It's being able to be concise. Let's take a look at the second one. The reason why Jhumpa Lahiri's novel is so great is because it has vivid imagery. Well, couldn't we just take out the reason why? Because doesn't the word because mean you're giving a reason why for something? So it's very repetitive. You're just repeating yourself. Now, this would all be very easy to see if you just went back and reread your work with the eyes of an editor, trying to be more concise with each sentence. Here are some examples of how you can cut down the number of words. Instead of saying in order to, you can just say to. In this day and age, I've heard that many times. So you could just say today. In view of the fact of, due to the fact of, for the reason that. All of this, you could just say because. You could say last but not least, but that's 4 words. Why can you just not say finally? So you might be asking, is this taking away my imagination and my creativity as a writer to write in the way that I want to? I don't think so. I think you have to consider your audience. Does your audience really want to watch you unfold a million words on the page that don't need to be there? You have to think about your audience. What does your audience want? They probably want the information as quickly as possible so they can get on with their day. Again, this is different from maybe creative storytelling and fiction writing. My next point is about avoiding cliches. Let's take a look at this first sentence. A healthy lifestyle enhances your ability both to live life to its fullest and to live to a ripe old age. Well, we have 2 cliches here. Live life to the fullest and live to a ripe old age. These are just expressions and cliches that we say, but they're kind of long-winded and they don't really need to be there. We could just say, a healthy lifestyle helps you live life fully and longer. Okay, yeah, the second one may seem like it's pared down a lot and it isn't as imaginative and fun as the first one, but I'm telling you that our culture and our readership, they value getting to the point. They value getting to the point when it comes to journalism and when it comes to nonfiction articles, because it makes your point more clear and you're not wasting their time. Here's some more examples of cliches. Better late than never. Get rid of it. Cool, calm, and collected. Just say calm. Hard as a rock. White as snow. Okay, these cliches are also just boring. I've heard them a million times before. Take out a cliche and substitute fresh words that you come up with, or restate the idea in plain language. If you use all of these, your writing is going to get too clogged up. So the point of this lesson was that when you're working on your 1 article per month, or how many articles you want to write per month, I want you to practice this round of proofreading just with being concise. Of course, we're going to learn more about how to edit in other ways, but this to me might be the most important aspect of editing in our 21st century, especially if you think about journalism. So please go through, read your articles. Are you being concise? If you are, then when I come through to edit them, I shouldn't have to do so much editing. Okay, great job, you guys. I hope you have a wonderful time working on your articles, and we'll see you next time.